All right, we are back in open session at this time, and I'll just note for the public while you're getting settled, we're going to give staff a moment to set the Zoom meeting back up so folks can join us virtually, including our council, before we move to the next item. So we'll just pause here for a moment until I get the high sign from staff that the virtual side of the meeting is ready to go. All right. Thank you all for your patience. We'll move forward with our agenda. The next item on our agenda is a Freedom of Information Act appeal from Mr. Jason Best. We'll begin with a presentation from council briefly on the status of this matter, and then I'll invite Mr. Best forward to make any comments that he has to the board on this matter. So let me know when David is available on Zoom.
All right. Are we able to hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yep.
Very good. So feel free to proceed with your presentation on the FOIA appeal, David.
Certainly. So just to give a little bit of background on this FOIA appeal, this is actually the second of two Freedom of Information Act requests from Mr. Best. They kind of segue into each other. The only appeal that is currently pending is the appeal of the FOIA dated February 25th, 2025. So just by way of background, the original FOIA sent by Mr. Best was on January 13th, 2025, asking for certain surveillance footage from January 12th and an identification of a certain CATA supervisor. That was responded to by Lindsay Dangle of my office. I understand that that was provided to Mr. Best, and he emailed with his second FOIA request on February 25th, 2025, indicating that CATA had fully complied with his FOIA thus far. The second Freedom of Information Act request was that same date, February 25th, 2025, and it asked for 4 items. A performance appraisal for this certain employee. It was Eric Pryor, and then disciplinary actions, complaints made against this employee, and confirmation as to whether or not this employee was still employed by CATA. And so that was responded to as well by Lindsay Dangle of my office, and essentially with a granting in part that there was confirmation that this employee was still employed by CATA. But as to the other 3 items, upon a review of his complete personnel file, there were no documents responsive to that request. And so the FOIA was responded to as denied in part as to items 1, 2, and 3, the performance appraisals, disciplinary actions, and complaints made against this employee. Simply put, there were no documents that existed in his personnel file responsive to that request. And so that was why that was denied in part. And frankly, I think we're probably here on just a little bit of a misunderstanding or miscommunication. And so that is the long and short of why we are here. And Mr. Best, I understand, has appealed that denial. And so at this point in time, I think that sets the stage for as far as what happened on the legal side of things. Is the complete personnel file was reviewed and the response was provided, number 4, but there simply were no documents that existed responsive to the request of numbers 1 through 3. So that's I think all the comments I have, just to lay out the framework and background relative to that.
Thank you, David. We appreciate that. So at this time, I would invite Mr. Best to address the board on his appeal, and if we could just make sure that we have a microphone available for that. Mr. Best, did you wish to offer any comments to the board on your appeal? Did you wish to offer any comments? Can you come over where the microphone over here is?
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jason Thomas Best. I'm a paralegal. I also have a degree in political science, and I also have a degree in associates from Human Services in Lansing Community College. I know there's 3 associate's degrees. Expert or anything, but I'm going to quote the Michigan Supreme Court for you. Bradley versus Saranac Community Schools Public Board of Education. This is also can be found in the Michigan Attorney General's FOIA Handbook, which is published online. So this isn't me. This is the Michigan Supreme Court. Constitution is the highest law in the land. Nobody in this room. On any political party, nobody. The Michigan Supreme Court ruled that performance appraisals, disciplinary actions, and complaints about a public employee's job's performance must be disclosed under FOIA. So that means your attorneys are saying that there are no performance appraisals of a supervisor. Your attorneys are now just claiming that there are no documents whatsoever on Mr. Pryor's even employment at CATA. Well, it says right here that the Michigan Supreme Court says you have to release everything. That means if I do a FOIA request on every single one of you, all of your emails, you better get with Dangle and start protecting those emails. But you can't protect this now. I'm putting you on notice. Release the documents to me so we can move forward with the ADA complaint, the Adult with Disabilities Act complaint, and the racist remarks and the racist ideology that was basically given according to my friend, who actually have a signed affidavit I'm going to be serving with Ms. Dangle. Is Ms. Dangle in the room today? Are any attorneys present from the attorney's firm that is representing CATA present in this room today? Does anybody have legal standing as a representative figure of CATA to debate what the Michigan Supreme Court has said? Move forward with this action. Release Mr. Pryor's documents to me. Everything that is not private. So that means his personal information, like personal emails, bank account information, social security numbers, addresses, things that would divulge any of his personal information is to be redacted. I don't want that information, and I'm not entitled to it by law. So, other than that, all of his personal files should be released to me via PDF format that can be emailed to me. And then we can move forward with the ADA and the racial discrimination claim. And I'll give you the affidavit signed of the witness who will take it on Ms. Dangle's behalf. I can hand that to the CEO or the head of the chair here now, so you guys can have a signed affidavit by my friend who was witness to this. So we also have the video footage to prove that this, in fact, did happen. And the video footage was released by Ms. Dangle. And we are grateful that she did make the right decision. However, you guys can figure this out, get the rest of these documents, this FOIA gets done and taken care of, then we can move forward with the ADA and the other claims that need to be done so people with disabilities can get the regress, that is deserved. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Best. Yep. Mike taken care of here. So colleagues, having heard from counsel on this in closed and open session and having heard from Mr. Best, what's the board's pleasure on this item? Mark? I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Can you use the microphone though?
I would move that we direct a letter to Mr. Best saying as follows. We have considered your appeal and related information, period. We agree that the types of documents mentioned in the appeal would be properly disclosed if they exist, period. we are reliably informed that no such documents exist nor have existed, making it impossible to provide copies of them, period. To the extent that the documents would be properly released if they existed, the appeal is allowed, period. But to the extent, or I guess that's a comma, but to the extent that no such documents exist, your appeal is denied, period.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Stephen. Seeing no discussion, I would, looking around. All right, seeing no discussion, I'd call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries. Thank you all. Let's proceed with our agenda then. The next item on our agenda is our proposed consent agenda, which includes 6 items for the board's consideration this evening. Those are the approval of the minutes of the February 2025 board meeting, the treasurer's report for January 2025, the purchase of additional large buses from New Flyer, the MDOT project authorization and addendum to the contract with Via Transportation, Inc., the MDOT contract authorization resolution, and finally, the subrecipient agreement with Disability Network Capital Area. Does any member of the board desire to have any of these consent agenda items removed to our discussion agenda? If not, I would ask if there's a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, moved by Phil. Is there a second? Seconded by Kelly. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The consent agenda is approved as presented, which brings us to this evening's discussion agenda. The first item on our discussion agenda is the fiscal year 2024 financial statements and audit report. We're going to begin, I believe, with some brief comments from our audit committee chair, Derek Milo. I'll ask if Brad has any introductory comments that he wants to make, and we have a presentation from our auditor. So audit committee chair, Derek, floor is yours. Please use the mic. Thank you.
I remembered. Good evening, fellow board members. The audit committee of the CATA board convened via Zoom on Thursday, March 13, 2025 to review the report from Jean Young and her team at Plant Moran. Where Jean and her folks review the audit, including some very positive news about our OPEB account, I did want to provide context to 2 points in the report. CATA does have a material weakness and a significant finding in this year's report. However, in each case, the issues identified had no material effect on CATA's financial operation and are both being addressed. The material weakness has to do with ensuring our procedures give an additional layer of redundancy to what our financial software allows staff to do. Staff is in the process of developing new/improved controls to address these findings and will submit a written procedure to the audit committee within the next 30 days for our review. On the significant finding, we unfortunately assigned some dollars spent into the wrong month. Again, it had no material bearing on our operations, and the situation has been addressed. I'm happy to answer any questions I can, and I wish to close my report with my thanks for my fellow committee members, Phil and Chelsea, for Brad and Jim, and for Jean and her team. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Brad, any initial comments that you wanted to make before we introduce our friends from Plant Moran?
Only that I also thank the audit committee and the auditors and staff for their hard work. Even finding material weaknesses, especially with our financial history, can be a positive in making us stronger, and we are committed to that, and we will follow through on that in the next 30 days, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Brad. We'd love to hear from you folks. And let's make sure we have a mic over there. Yep, looks like it. Great.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Jean Young, and with me is Chris Gilbert. So as mentioned, we already met with the audit committee and kind of went through the reports in detail. So really today, I'm just going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to provide some of the highlights on the financial statements. But again, we're happy to answer questions, or they can go through management and they can get back with us. And we'd also like to thank management for all the hard work. There were some new audit standards today that we had to implement for your entity and various other entities, and they require a lot more digging than in the past. So thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Happy to be here this evening. So I am going to cover a few highlights in the financial statements. It's going to be very high level, so I'm not going to go into all 60-some pages of the report, so just staying very high level in the interest of time. So the first 3 pages in the audited financial statements are what would be our independent auditor's report. So this essentially is What all this is saying essentially is that we are giving an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assertion that we can give as auditors. So next, I'm going to just turn to page 8 and going to stay really high level. This is essentially your income statement. So at the end of the day, in looking in fiscal year 2024, so while total operating expenses was essentially identical to the previous year, total revenue and capital grants increased nearly $9 million from the prior year. Most of this increase, and so essentially that led to a total net position increase of about 13 million over the previous year. So most of that increase in net position was essentially related to just additional federal operating funds, which was mostly related to the COVID relief dollars in ARPA funds. So essentially, with that being said, as you exhaust these COVID relief dollars going forward, it'll just be important to revisit your financial situation as you move forward. And just taking a step back and looking at your balance sheet. So the good news is that the authority continues to have no long-term debt. So that puts you in a really good position from a balance sheet perspective, and just looking at funding what liabilities you do have. The only non-current liability right now would be your OPEB and pension liabilities, which that transitions me into the next portion, which is essentially your pension and OPEB liabilities and where they landed at the end of the year. So at the end of the audit report, there are these supplemental schedules that show a really good summary. Page 37 is the first one, which essentially shows ultimately a 10-year schedule of a snapshot at a point in time of where you landed on each of these plans. So the authority has 2 plans for pension, the first being for the union employees. So that plan had a net pension asset of about 8.9 million as of the end of the 2024 fiscal year. So that puts you over 100% funded at about 119%. So as you may remember, in the last few years, there was a large investment loss with just the market downturn, but you've been able to weather that storm and come back. And essentially, at the end of the day, this is a well-funded plan being over 100% funded. And really, again, it's just really important to remember that this is as of a point in time. So there are also a number of factors that are out of your control with these plans, actuarial assumptions that need to be revisited every year, as well as the market obviously can fluctuate as well. So with that being said, I also want to turn to page 40, which is the other pension plan for your administrative employees. Similar story here with how well this plan is funded. You're at 93% funded on this plan. And this plan, that puts you at a small net pension liability of about 1.7 million. So with those 2 plans, I would say the state requires you to be at 60% at a minimum without being in corrective action. And the authority is in a much better spot than many others in the industry, with one plan being over 100% and one at 93%. And much of that has to do with the strategic decisions of the authority and just doing what is within your control to be able to stay ahead and fund these liabilities. And then that brings me to OPEB. So on page 44, this shows the schedule of your OPEB liability for the last several years. And I know this has been of much discussion in recent years. So as of fiscal year 2024, that OPEB liability is about 36% funded, or at a net liability of about 35 million. So I do want to put this in perspective, because comparatively to the pension plans, that might seem, a little low. But if you look back just a few years, just to 2020, you were at only 12% funded. So just in those 4 or 5 years, you were able to get up from 12% to 36%. And looking at the liability number, it was at about 80 million of net liability back in 2020, whereas now it's cut in less than half at 36 million. So that being said, as we've mentioned in the past several years, you've been working on this for a very long time. It's been a phased approach. Management has made a lot of strategic moves and efforts to address this liability. So you've done what you could do that's within your control to be able to address this liability. And while the state is focused more on pension, they still want you at least 40% for OPEB, which you are already on the right track on that. I think your corrective action plan had you getting there years down the line, so you're already ahead of schedule on that, as well as you're in a much better position than many others in the industry who may not be close to that 40%. So again, it's important to remember that these are snapshots at a point in time. So as the market fluctuates, as actuarial assumptions change year in and year out, that's something to consider, but you've already done a lot of what's within your control to address this liability. So I think that's something that's just very encouraging to see over the last handful of years. With that being said, there was a lot of information that was just mentioned in the last 5 minutes, so we'd love to open it up to questions.
Thank you, Chris and Jean. Questions on the audit report? Go ahead, Stephen.
For a newbie, can you expand OPEB?
So OPEB would be post-retirement employee benefits, so it's retiree health care. So it's impacted by the healthcare trends, the mortality rates, and a lot of entities, as Chris referred to, have what's called a pay-as-you-go. They're paying just the current premiums for retiree. They're not really setting aside any funding. And that is where the state is looking at that from a corrective action, just to make sure these obligations are being considered by entities. So again, great improvement. You had some improvements from the actuary studies by doing an experience study and seeing that some of the assumptions may have been a little bit higher than they needed to be. But as Chris said, this can fluctuate positive or negative, but it's just something to monitor.
Other questions? Go ahead, Phil.
Question for Brad. Since we're halfway through the year. Congratulations on last year, keeping expenses the same and increasing revenue by 13 million. Any projections for where you may end up at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of September?
Thank you, Treasurer DeShane. And I wouldn't even begin to give you numbers. I'm going to ask Jim Friend to stand up if you would allow me to let him come forward.
So our budget was to add 2 million. It's going to be, I think we're going to maybe do slightly better than the 2 million. One of the things that's moving in our favor is actually that we didn't know about when we set the budget was some of these adjustments to OPEB and pension. Some of those that will be built in to this year have moved in our favor. So it'll be a non-cash adjustment, but it's going to make our expenses go down. And that's going to help offset some of the healthcare expenses that we have in the current year, exactly, that are over budget right now. So I think we'll get to at least the 2 million that we budgeted for. I'm hoping for 3, 4, 5. I wouldn't want to guess beyond that.
And on the expense side?
So yeah, on the expense side, we budgeted just under 70 million. I think we'll be in that ballpark, but like I said, we've got some healthcare expenses in the current year that are hurting us, but we've got some other things that are positive. So I think we're in a good spot.
Thanks, Jim. Other questions? Brad, any additional comments that you wanted to make?
Only again, my thanks to the team and Chair of the Audit Committee. You've been aboard the same period of time that I have on OPEB corrective action, and we were paying as we went, and then all of a sudden it was we needed to get to 40% liability, and I really appreciate not only the staff's help, but in the negotiations and most recently the work that Steve and the negotiations team have done on sitting down and looking at healthcare plans. So the team approach, and you can see it in the numbers going the other direction. Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. All right, one last check. Any questions? Seeing none. Chris, Jean, thank you for all your work on this, and to staff who I know work a great deal on the audit, and to our audit committee, Derek and the audit committee members for all of your work as well. Would you like to make a motion to accept the audit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make a motion for the CATA board to accept the financial statements and report on federal awards for fiscal 2024 and the communication of those charged with the governance and management of CATA.
Second, moved by Derek, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries, and we've accepted the financial statements and report. Again, thank you for joining us this evening. The second and final item on our discussion agenda is an amendment to our security services contract. Let me first recognize Brad for background information on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You will see this item come up over the past couple of years. You will recall back in 2019 where we made a change on security at our facilities, and we changed our interaction with the public. And we're quite proud of that. With that, we've also had a learning curve on the amount of staff that we need, and the social issues down there have changed dramatically. We need to increase the number of folks that we have down there, number one. And number two, we also bought another building, which we're going to be providing joint security across the street from. So we've asked the security company to go back and look at and requote security services. I am comfortable, and if we need to get into more detail, I've asked Todd to be prepared to have that discussion, but I'm comfortable with increasing this amount to make sure that we stay on top of things down there.
Thank you, Brad. Questions from board members on this item? If there are none, then is there a motion to approve the contract? Moved by Derek. Is there a second? Seconded by Stephen. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The contract is approved, which brings us to old business. There is no noticed old business to come before the board this evening. Likewise with new business, which then brings us to our second and final public comment opportunity. This is the time we set aside during each of our meetings to hear comments from the public on any issue related to CATA, not limited to those items on the agenda tonight. Same request as before. Please consider filling out a blue card to assist our secretary and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll have a timer to assist you with that. I'll call folks who have submitted cards in the order in which they've been received, and then ask if there's anyone else in the room who wishes to offer public comment at this second and final opportunity. So we'll begin again with Daniel Black. Mr. Black?
You really want me to use the microphone? Sure, I'd be glad to. I love this room. I love the acoustics in this facility. Yet trying to get into this room was a disappointment. Like I said, we're here at the Disability Network. That there is to my right, 25 feet to my right, is an automatic handicap door opener, and it doesn't work. It is my belief that holding a meeting here with a faulty accessibility equipment not disrespects, but shall we say a better word, endorses that inaccessibility. I'm not the most articulate gentleman out there, and yeah, I went a long stretch and used the word gentleman. But I try to get my point across. I guess I'm trying to get it across twice because in advertising they say repetition is best. And then I've during the break, during the closed session, I had an correction, or a better word, I thought, it endorses that inaccessibility with me, disabled and handicapped folks. And again, I repeat the second time because I left off an additional paragraph that was on page 2. Granted, Nick and Tina opened the door for me, and I'm thankful for that, Nick and Tina. Yet, providing that accommodation to accessibility, in my mind, is like Nick and Tina shouting into Brad and Daniel's deaf ears when their hearing aids are removed from them. So, again, I close with I love the acoustics in this room. Keep coming here as long as they fix the door. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Black. Is there anyone else who wishes to offer public comment at this second and final opportunity this evening? Can you go over to the mic, please?
I won't go over your guys' response was. We can do that later. I'm concerned about public glass. I'm concerned about the glass at our bus stops in the city of Lansing. The city of Lansing has over 600 assault and batteries reported, according to the FBI. All right, this is the Rust Belt city. People are very, very aggressive towards each other. And when we have that inside of our homes, and we have that from the economic situation that's here that we all are aware of, that happened here with GM and certain other factories being closed, that's why there's a high rate of assaults in this city. Lansing police gets over 600 reported every year. Now, this is according to the FBI. So if you take that and you put glass bus stops, after this guy just got into a fight with his girlfriend or his friend or his roommate or whatever, and he's walking to the bus stop, what do you think he's going to do with that glass? There's broken glass bus stops throughout this city. It's causing a danger to the public, and it's wasting our money. All we have to do is simply put up clear plastic bus stops. I know it's not glamorous, and I know it's not beautiful, but this is not Marquette. Okay? This is not Ann Arbor. This is not Paw Paw. This is Lansing, Michigan. And though we have the state capital here, there is a huge rift amongst the own people here in their own city. So if we can try to alleviate the amount of public destruction, or the alleviate if there's a lady there that's sitting at that bus stop and a man or a woman, or however they identified, gets angry and mad at whatever is going on in their life, I'm not saying it's okay to do. I'm saying it's okay to break the law. Broke the law, they should be held accountable and prosecuted for it. However, can't do that. We can't put cameras at every single bus stop. I mean, I don't think that's the right answer. So I think the right answer is try to mitigate that damage, save CATA some money so you guys don't have to keep replacing these glass bus stops. I've got video of glass bus stops that are busted out current right now this week that I've been in. And I'm flabbergasted that human beings would do that. So in considering Lansing, that has changed. When I was younger and I saw those things happen, I was flabbergasted. But as I got older and realized about Lansing, this is what's the best thing that we need to do. So that's all I ask that you guys do. Put some trash cans in front of the bus stops. There's an old school bus stop that kind of has that plastic on Jolly in Pennsylvania, right down the road. If you guys wanted to leave out of here, just drive right down the road. You'll see right in front of that pot shop that's right there. It's frequented a lot. That bus stop, there's a huge brown trash can, and it's screwed right in front of it. Okay, and we know how human beings react. If that trash can is 10 feet away, like it is at the bus stop in front of Target on Grand River, there's the glass bus stop. Really nice bus stop, by the way. I really like it. I was very impressed when I seen you guys put that up. Very cool. However, 10 feet away is the city of East Lansing's trash can. So human beings that are sitting at that bus stop open up their wrapper of potato chips that they got from Target. I'm not saying that this is right. I'm saying that human beings do this, and they'll just let that trash go.
Thank you, Mr. Best. We appreciate your comments. You've exceeded your time, though, so thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to offer public comment at this second and final opportunity this evening? All right, seeing none and there being no further business to come before the CATA board today, our meeting is adjourned at 5:13 p.m. Thank you all.